for a couple years before personal life took me down the Bayou, but I was grateful for the opportunity to be a broadcast journalism major at Nichols because of the whole big fish and small pond thing, the opportunities I got there to pursue both in school and in the media around Lafourche and Terrebonne, I think really helped me today. I double majored in English and got various minor degrees, which happens when you're in school for 6 years. I grew up in politics. My mother ran campaigns for local candidates, city council, metro council in Baton Rouge. I grew up in Baton Rouge. And I work for Jay Darden now, but didn't previously, but his first campaign was in 1987 for metro council in Baton Rouge, actually for state senate. And I was knocking on doors, going door to door for my mother, for him, in the 6th grade. And so I kind of grew up with my mom doing political campaigns, doing all the little things. Direct mail was big back then, stuffing envelopes, knocking on doors in advance of the candidate coming behind you who's still at the next house. And I kind of knew that I wanted to work in politics. And there was no political communication back then, even at LSU. So I thought a natural avenue would be mass communication. I don't know why I chose broadcast, but I never really had too much intention of working in it. I just knew that it had the fewest number of students at Nichols and would still allow me to get a lot of writing practice in, which I did. When I graduated and came back to Baton Rouge, I got a job, an entry-level communication job in the state senate. And that was an eye-opener. I thought I knew about politics then. When I was in Thibodaux, I covered politics for the daily newspaper there, the Daily Comment. I was the news director at the radio station. I did a lot of sports, but I always loved politics. And so I would do little Lafourche Parish Council fights, it seemed like, every week, and same thing in Terrebonne and school boards and everything like that. And it sounds horrendously boring, but it really kind of opens your eyes as to how politics works. Have you ever heard the expression, all politics is local? It is. And so I kind of thought I knew how it worked when I got to the state legislature. 8 years in the Senate. And I was working for the communication office, which is public information kind of thing. And it's kind of a hybrid of politics and PR. I didn't work for a specific Senate member. I worked for the whole body. So there were 39 bosses, plus my boss. And I think the greatest advantage of that for me was I had to learn all about the state of Louisiana. 39 separate districts, 39 plus however many specific areas of focus in that district. And it was really served me well, knowing I was probably going to spend at least the next part of my career in state government, even after that. Helped me a lot to know as much about Louisiana as I could. But there wasn't a lot of PR in that. My main job was to take projects that already happened that were either budget-funded projects or educational initiatives or things like that and promote them within that member's district. So I wasn't doing a lot of creative. Changed a little bit in 2006 when, back to Jay Darden, he got elected Secretary of State. And I applied for his communication director job, which was called press secretary, and I got it. And that embarked on a new phase of my career in which I was representing a statewide elected official who represented the whole state. And that was fun. One of the Secretary of State's main jobs is elections, running elections throughout the state. And I was able to really interact with the national media a lot in the 08 presidential race. It was a historic race, of course, as you all know. And Louisiana was a little bit more of a player in that presidential race than it was this past time around. And So every day the national media was calling. The international media, all kinds of journalists from India were covering this race because of Bicentennial's entry into it. And I learned quickly that Louisiana politics were not like politics in other states. People couldn't believe that anybody could run for governor. I mean, these are Washington journalists from The Hill and Politico and Roll Call that didn't know that you didn't have to have your party's nomination to run for a statewide elected office in Louisiana. And so I found myself learning a lot more about elections law and having to explain it a lot more. And again, not as much creative, but the media relations part of that job was, I think, helped me more than, that's where I developed the most professionally there. And just having different attitudes about Louisiana, and I'm sure you can imagine that other states think they know what goes on here, probably have a kind of a thought about how Louisiana does business, and it's probably not positive a lot of the times. So I worked as I could to change that, and ended up we had a pretty, relatively error-free, smooth presidential election. Hi, Laura. This is one of my student workers, Laura Edward. It's an advertising major, right?
Huh?
An advertising senior.
Yes.
And there's the other one, Valerie Richard. I'll probably know her. In 2010, Jay Darden ran for lieutenant governor. This was an unexpired term. Mitch Landry, the previous lieutenant governor, had won a race for mayor of New Orleans, and it left a hole in the term. Jay Darden ran for it, knowing that if he won, he would have to run again for the full term in 2011, and that's what happened. He hired me took me with him, I guess, from Secretary of State. My title changed from press secretary to communication director at my request, and it ended up, I think, being a lot more descriptive of what we do at the office of lieutenant governor, and that's what I'm going to talk a little bit more about. When I got to the lieutenant governor's office, lieutenant governor supervises a cabinet-level office called the Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism. That includes arts, it includes parks, it includes all kinds of cultural development, state museums, the state library, and tourism. My assistant and I are fond of saying we work for the most fun department in state government because we're not constantly talking about sick people or welfare or revenue or, the problems with education. We're actually going out and selling Louisiana. And it is a lot more fun. We don't have the money we'd like to have to be able to do it, but we're securing the knowledge that we're doing one of the few things in state government that actually brings revenue in for Louisiana. When I got there, I noticed a pretty strict dichotomy in terms of the offices within CRT, Culture, Recreation, and Tourism. There was the cultural development people who didn't know what the state library did, and the tourism people who didn't care what anybody did other than them. And state parks and the museum didn't work together, and I thought, and I talked it over with Mr. Darden, and we agreed that it was important to change that culture to kind of have everyone on the same page. And from the standpoint of cross-promoting all of our initiatives. And he agreed that I was the best person to do that through the communication office. So the first thing I did was form a communication committee there of they had what's called a public information officer, which is just a state government word for what I do, a little bit lower level in each of those little 5 agencies. So I brought them all together along with a couple of other people I thought could help and staffed it with me and my assistant and the students. And our goal is to go over everything that we're doing in that particular time period and see how one agency can help the other one. For example, we run these welcome centers that you see on interstates when you come back into Louisiana. And That's a tourism thing, but we have also a book festival for the state library. We do once a year, and we try to promote it as a really big deal. And so we have used tourism money, and we did, to put ads in those welcome centers, to use our tourism agencies, our contractors, to make ads and put them in our out-of-state publications and things like that. So the Communication Committee strives to do that across all the agencies in CRT. And it's, I think, been pretty successful in that at least the right hand knows what the left hand is doing now throughout the agency. I was asked what I do on a day-to-day basis, and the answer is it's different every day. No matter what I have to do, it's never boring coming to work, because I'll come to work and check email, and that's the only thing I do that I did yesterday. It's a series of special projects, and it's a lot of fun. I have some examples of them. For tourism, we have a tourism budget that we are required by law to spend 90% of advertising to out-of-state people, which is why you don't see a ton of Louisiana Pick Your Passion television ads or something like that within the state. And if you do think you see a lot, you see 90% more of them out of state. And so Jay Darden came up with the Pick Your Passion campaign himself. During his political campaign to be elected lieutenant governor, the old slogan, whatever it was kind of dated. And he kind of thought of that himself during the campaign when he got elected. Focus tested it, and it became our new marketing slogan for Louisiana. It's branded on everything we do, and we have contractors, ad agencies, PR firms, and web contractors that have always been used in tourism to market Louisiana. And when we got there, we saw just how much money we were paying to these contractors to help us with the message. We have to pay them something because we don't have marketing professionals on staff. It's something that the legislature has decided shouldn't exist, and we should just pay money to contractors to do it. But we took a lot more of the creative and brought it in-house. And it's something that I wasn't used to because my job was a lot more reactive in the past. But I like to think that I learned quickly, and so now we produce a lot of the creative ourselves, especially for the non-Department of Tourism agencies. Like when state parks need something done, instead of paying a bunch of money plus 15% commissions to ad agencies, we can do it ourselves. Our students have shown a remarkable talent for more of the technical side that graphic designers cost a lot of money in ad agencies, so obscene amount of money. And so we're able to save a lot of billable hours doing that ourselves. And to do that, we have to be more creative. Everything we do is to promote Louisiana is done with two things in mind. One, pick your passion. That goes on everything. The logo will go on all of our ads, and the concept will go in the copy. Say things like, what's your passion? Is your passion music or outdoors, hunting and fishing? Is it food? Is it culture? Is it museums? Anything like that. And we'll always make sure to brand it that way. And the second thing that we always have to keep in mind is who's the boss. The boss is Jay Darden. It's his, Pick Your Passion was his idea, and so and he himself, if you've ever heard him speak, you know this, is the best promoter of Louisiana there ever is. He knows all the history, he loves to give talks on it, and so we try to defer to him to be the best Louisiana salesman there is. We have various other special projects that we do. One of our state parks properties is Poverty Point. Is anybody here from Northeast Louisiana? You know about Poverty Point? Well, you're about to. It's an archaeological site, and it was the site of the first settlement in Louisiana. Not permanent settlement, that's Natchitoches, but 1500 BC, there were Louisianians. 4 of the Mayans are Aztecs, just like the ones who built the mounds out here and everything like that. The Poverty Point is a very unique archaeological settlement in North Louisiana. They planted these huge circles of, well, they didn't plant them. They had these huge settlement circles where they lived in, just massive. There's a mound, a main mound out there that is literally about the size of 300 of these things. And it's a big deal because we submitted it for nomination as a World Heritage Site, of which there are very few in North America. It's chosen by UNESCO from the United Nations. And it's a huge honor. We'll be submitting it next month. And as we found out, a lot of Louisianians don't even know about it. So that'll be something that we promote, not only for tourism, but also for in-state awareness. We have 22 state parks, 18 historic sites that make up our parks office. We got our budget swept to zero for maintenance and repair of that this year. So we decided to start a foundation, not for profit, that would allow people to donate money to the parks, either a specific park or the whole park system as a whole, specifically frequent visitors of the parks who see that things are in need of repair that we don't have money to fix. And so we started the Louisiana Parks Foundation, and we're going to start promoting it. If you're in Dr. Broussard's 4005 class, you probably heard me pitch this and then rejected it. But we're going to have some push for that, probably early spring when people start coming back to the parks. It's a big deal to us. The state parks are really diamonds in the rough in Louisiana, and they have a fervent following of their regulars, but the storms that we have and everything else just pushes our maintenance repair budget far past our means, which again are zero. What else do we do?
Bicentennial.
Oh, right. 2012 is Louisiana's bicentennial year. Came into the Union in April of 1812. And so we spent this entire year promoting 200 years of Louisiana. And we had numerous events throughout the year. Our big one in the spring was an April 30th special session of the legislature. Special joint session, which is the first time that the legislature is going into joint session without the governor presiding. And it was to tell the story of Louisiana. We had all kinds of Louisiana celebrities. We had, who did we have?
They may not read.
Yeah, they're a little young for that. What's her name from the Beverly Hillbillies? Ellie Mae Clampett from the Beverly Hillbillies. She's from Zachary. We had Jay Chevalier, Irma Thomas sang. All the past former living governors and lieutenant governors were there, and Mr. Darden gave a nice short presentation on Louisiana's history, but the goal is to bring awareness throughout the state. And we've had a lot of success on a tourism level from out-of-state visitors over the Bicentennial. Just this past weekend in New Orleans, we had a military parade coinciding with Veterans Day that was called the Bicentennial Military Parade, and which Laura worked on. It was a big hit. You may have seen it coming out of commercial if you watched the Saints game this weekend. Them marching through Jackson Square. I think we're done with Bicentennial.
The lights, happening.
Right. The festivals, you all know Louisiana has tons of festivals, more than 450 of them. And all of them back because of the BP settlement got a little bit of promotional money. And but one thing they required to do is tie in with our marketing campaign. So they'll have Pick Your Passion presence at their festivals. They also have picked up on using Bicentennial for that. Vernacular's Christmas Parade of Lights is the big one in December, and that's really the last in the Heraconic. 2013 is the Year of Music in Louisiana. That's our big promotion for the next year. We're kind of kicking it off. At the same time, we're bringing Bicentennial promotion to a close with a Bicentennial Music Extravaganza, which is not an event, but it's going to be a production on Louisiana Public Broadcasting. And what we did was got 12 iconic Louisiana musical artists, including Harry Connick Jr., Better Than Ezra, Tim McGraw. Tried to get Brittany, she never called us back. Charmaine Neville, I think we had one of those brass bands. No, not Charmaine, Aaron Neville. Lots of others. And they're all singing our state song, which is what?
You're my sunshine.
Right. In their own kind of musical style. So they'll either rock it out or play whatever they play. And that's going to be a show on LPB and hosted by Harry Connick Jr. And who we got to meet when we had the press conference for this. It was very dreamy. Tourism itself has a bunch of promotional opportunities. And this, again, I'm a broadcast journalism major. All I did in college was write and talk on the radio. And the creative part, I picked up a little more along my professional career after college, but it all snowballed at CRT. There's so many opportunities for creative type work, and I'm really relishing it now. I didn't think I was a creative type, but working with the agencies, with our contractors, makes me see that I used to be intimidated by it, and I'm not anymore. I still don't take on any huge projects, certainly not anything graphic design related, but it really is, I think if I moved away from government communication from here, then I would have a better shot at making a career at an ad agency rather than just have to move straight to PR. One of the big aspects of my job that does not relate to creative is I'm the legislative liaison for the Lieutenant Governor. That means when session starts, which this year will be in April, legislative session, I'll be responsible for compiling all of the legislation that we'll be pushing, hoping to get passed, and more importantly, weeding out, trying to uncover all of the legislation that we don't want to pass, or that we think, I should say that we think there will be problems with if it did pass, that maybe the authors of the legislation didn't foresee. The biggest story every year at the Capitol for my agency and every other agency is budget. And I don't get too much into budget because the Lieutenant Governor does most of that himself. He served in the legislature for 15 years. He was chairman of the Finance Committee, and he knows more about it than anyone we have. So, but as far as the policy work goes, because of my experience in the state Senate, 8 years there, I was able to take to that job and do all of our bill tracking and find out what's up on which days, and then be the person responsible when we miss a bill and something passes that we didn't intend. So I spent a lot of time sitting in committee rooms and testifying before committees, and it doesn't sound like work a communication director would be doing until you do it, and then you realize it's all PR. You're trying to promote your good programs, whether it's to get funded or to have some policy change to them through legislation, and you're trying to make the members also aware of any problems with other legislation that we may have. That's kind of a one-off from what a communication director does, but it's something that, because I worked in the legislature, I do enjoy. And of course, there's the media relations job. That's any government communicator who's going to be answering the phone, talking to reporters. And I do a lot of it. I don't do as much as I did at Secretary of State, simply because elections were such a big deal there. But I do a lot of it for the Lieutenant Governor, and I have a great relationship with reporters because I did it for so long at the Senate. Now we're all friends and we tailgate together and all that stuff. And it makes it really, really few. We did a forum here for PRSSA about a year ago, which was how government communicators and reporters get along and things like that. And the consensus was clear from our side if you respect their deadlines and don't lie to them ever, and do your best to get them the information, you will have a great working relationship with reporters. And it sounds simple, but a lot of government communicators and PR professionals aren't that good at it. My biggest project, I could say, for the last 3 months and the next 2 or 3 is the Super Bowl. New Orleans is hosting its record-tying 10th Super Bowl on February 3rd, and it's actually making a bid for another one at the end of that year. And we haven't had one in New Orleans since 2002. A lot's changed in New Orleans and in the Superdome and with the NFL since 2002. I serve on the Super Bowl's media PR committee, and most of that, in fact, the entirety of that committee, with the exception of me, is made up of people representing the interests of New Orleans and the NFL and the Saints, whereas I make a big deal in that committee out of representing the interests of Louisiana. Our agency, through the legislature, gave $6 million to the Super Bowl. So the entirety of the state's contribution to Super Bowl 47 is coming through the Lieutenant Governor's budget. Therefore, I thought it was important that we have a seat at the table as far as our idea of what should be promoted at the Super Bowl. We're credentialing 5,500 media, and that's just for the sports media. It doesn't count the people who come down here and do feel-good stories about, God knows you know what they're going to be. Katrina is never going to die. The oil spill, and they're already calling about this, you know, and so the important thing is to get in front of those stories. We want to have storylines available for them, not to write their story for them, but to give them opportunities to explore the positive sides of New Orleans and Louisiana and the positive sides of recovery. So a lot of what our meetings consist of are we have kind of a subcommittee that's a messaging committee. We want to all be on message. And so we kick around ideas about what's a good thing. They're going to talk about New Orleans recovering from Hurricane Katrina. We're going to get out in front of them and tell them, oh, here's our service story. Here are 5 playgrounds, and this is what we're doing. Here are 5 playgrounds that have not been renovated since the hurricane because the New Orleans Recreation Department didn't have the money to do it. So we're taking all the Super Bowl volunteers, including many of the players, and going to rebuild 5 playgrounds throughout Louisiana, throughout New Orleans. And I'm sure one in each council district. And one of the playgrounds, and I can't remember which one, is going to receive the actual game turf from the Super Bowl out of the Superdome for its football field. And we think that's going to be a great story, and that's an example of one of the ones we're going to offer when out-of-state reporters want to say, show me an example of something, recovery from Katrina or something like that. So every day I lie in bed thinking of stuff like that we can do. We're going to compile all the storylines and put them on a thumb drive and give them to the media as they come in. And we're also working to, like I said, promote Louisiana. We, meaning the Office of Tourism, have secured space in the Super Bowl Media Center. If you've ever seen coverage of the Super Bowl, they have an entire media center anchored by what's called Radio Row, which is all the national radio guys lined up. In this case, it's in the Convention Center in New Orleans. And we're going to have our partners have actual footprint space in the Convention Center. Our partners are the local convention and visitors bureaus throughout Louisiana. So instead of getting all New Orleans all the time, which is what you would get if there were nobody representing the state's interest at the table, we'll have one day, it'll be for the week that the media center is open. Before the game, we'll have the Lake Charles CVB or the Shreveport Bossier one or something like that, to where people coming in can decide, oh, well, maybe there is more. here's what's going on in that part of the state. The other thing we're going to do in that area is have a tourism professional, which we employ many, available for the media. So if they decide that they get bored, and they will, because they'll be there for 8 days, and we only have so many pub crawls planned for them. So, and if they want to take a day and go charter fishing, or plantation tours, or cemetery tours, or go take a day trip from New Orleans, we'll have travel counselors there who can do that and promote those parts of the state as well. And we're actually going to push them to do that. I plan on spending all week in the media center. First floor is Radio Row and the Writers, and the second floor is the Social Media Command Center. And pushing travel outside of New Orleans. We're glad they're in New Orleans. We recognize that New Orleans is the gateway to Louisiana for the vast majority of our tourists. But while they're here, we want to give them the opportunity to see other parts of the state. Super Bowl is a really big deal for us. And we're at the 10. And it's, you know, New Orleans, I'm of the opinion the Super Bowl should only ever be played in 3 cities, in San Diego, New Orleans, and Miami. And New Orleans is by far the best of those 3. In October of 2013, we're going to submit a bid for the 2017 Super Bowl, which would make us the city that, or make New Orleans the city that's hosted the most Super Bowls. Therefore, we need to put on a really good one this year. I'm going to take questions now. I think I've kind of described what I do. I know y'all are PR people, and again, PR is something that I've just recently stepped into. From a full-time standpoint, it's always part of the job. So stop tweeting and start asking. Yes, ma'am.
I know some people in this room are interested in learning a bit more about sports. Are you guys taking volunteers to help with the Super Bowl efforts?
The Super Bowl is taking volunteers. I don't think it's too late to be a Super Bowl volunteer. If you go to nolasuperbowl.com, you can find the sign-up form. The way they work the volunteer effort is they got one of their corporate sponsors, which there are very few, Chevron this year, and Chevron is sponsoring the entire volunteer effort. And the volunteers are really the heart and soul of the game. They do everything from when you step out of the gate at the airport, when the journalists and the fans arrive, the volunteers are there. Everyone will be wearing the same shirt, of course. And they'll be stationed throughout the CBD in the French Quarter. And I forgot to mention Super Bowl Experience, which is the fan experience that you see on TV at every Super Bowl. It's going to be in Waldenburg Park along the river between the aquarium and Jackson Square. And our partners will have a presence there too. We secured places for the CDBs throughout the state there. The volunteers will be there. They'll be there on game day, pointing people to the Superdome. And they'll, of course, I don't think they're going to work all week. I'm sure they'll work in shifts. But nolasuperbowl.com, you can probably get the weekend shifts or something like that, maybe. But that's where you start. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Y'all started working on anything with the NBA All-Star Game?
Yes.
No?
NBA All-Star Game is coming back to New Orleans. Is it 2014?
Yeah.
And we kind of got lucky with the last NBA All-Star Game hosted in New Orleans, which was in 2008. They were just coming off their PR nightmare of an All-Star Game in Vegas, in which all kinds of players got in trouble and fans had bad experiences, and kind of cemented their idea never to go back to Vegas for any professional sport. And awarded to New Orleans next year. And there was a lot of controversy surrounding that because nobody thought New Orleans was ready 3 years after Katrina, or 2.5 years after Katrina, to host which they call the basketball Super Bowl. And so, but New Orleans, if I can mix metaphors, knocked it out of the park and instantly became tops in the rotation to get it back, and they did. And we will be giving money to the NBA All-Star Game as a tourism promotion, and it is, because the NBA, that was an experience that It was completely different than I thought it would be. And it goes hand in hand with one of Jay Darden's goals when he came into office, which is selling Louisiana as a sports destination in general. We have the Final Four, men's Final Four here this year. Next year we have the Super Bowl, we have the women's Final Four, we've had the Bassmasters here 2 out of every 4 years, it seems like, for the last 10. NBA All-Star Game, bidding on another Super Bowl, the Sugar Bowl and the World Bowl every year, 3 BCS championships. I think they should all be played here, of course, but after this year in college football, as I'm sure you know, the BCS goes away and cities are going to be able to bid on the championship game because there will be a playoff format. And we expect to be a major player in that as well. Anybody else?
All right, thank you very much.
I have one more thing. The question that you didn't ask, but you should have, is what you should be doing to prepare yourselves for your career. And it's the one I get most often, whether it's PR or any journalism or political communication. And the answer is very clear. Just stop thinking about grad school and start writing. I can't tell you the number of, and I speak to groups like this frequently. I get emails a lot. I talk to people one-on-one about this. And I don't want to deride grad school because it's a great thing, but how many of y'all in here consider yourselves very strong writers? It's the most important thing you can do. And I've thrown away resumes that were otherwise great experience-wise because they were written badly or their writing samples were bad. And I will continue to do that. Experience is something that you will get on the job. Writing is something that I expect you to learn in school. I can help you improve on it, and I will, but I'm very picky about it. I'm very picky about AP style. Quit rolling your eyes, Laura. And it's very important to me, and when I've sat on panels, they all say the same, whether they're lobbyists or government communicators or reporters, the answer is always the same. Become a better writer than you are now because that's what we care about. Yes, ma'am?
I have a question about how you suggest in your writing experience. There's only so much often in the classroom, class projects, and some teachers who know who are supposed to be set to A, B, stocks, and all function orders. So what you suggest is the best way?
My suggestion will be anyone will take an unpaid worker, whether it's newspaper or a lobbying firm or somebody like me. Government is full of interns, and for the most part, I have done this for both of these girls and for many student workers in the past, will write you an internship and write your evaluation at the end, and you can get 3 hours for it. The paying jobs aren't always there, you're right, but the jobs are, and people who will, evaluate